I had the opportunity to progress in HR through a couple of different fast-growing retail organizations that gave me a lot of insight on business first and how to really align my skill set to business and through people strategy. I started off kind of narrow in a training and development role, and then eventually that evolved. And one day I was literally handed a head of HR opportunity at a small startup organization and did not know what to do. So I had to quickly learn and figure out how I was going to fill my toolbox with skills other than training and organizational development. And that was a real turning point for me to say, what am I going to do to make this opportunity a success? Throughout my career, I had a lot of people mentoring and sponsoring me, kind of more informally. There was a lot of folks that I encountered in my career that believed in me more than perhaps I believed in myself and what I was capable to do. And through clearly listening to them and listening to what they thought my strengths were, it enabled me to keep down my path and, again, keep filling my toolbox to make sure that I was on the right path. My career kind of went back and forth between human resources and operations roles. I had the pleasure of spending quite a lot of my career at AutoNation, a Fortune 200 company, 25 billion in revenue, big organization, popping back in and out of operational and HR roles. I ended up spending quite a lot of time as the head of HR there. When it was time for me to make a career change, I opted for a completely different industry, for healthcare, and decided it was a big risk, but one that I was very, very willing to take. And I think you have to take those risks and recognizing that you do have skills that are transferable. So since that point, it's been a great journey at Jackson Health System, which is a more local organization, but still very complex and powerful in its own right, just very different from my experience at AutoNation. So changing industries is always a bit scary. And it is taking a risk. I went from being the head of HR at AutoNation, an automotive retail company. My entire career had been in retail and service businesses, and made a leap to healthcare, not knowing anything about healthcare other than maybe being a patient once or twice. And so what I needed to really do is look at what are those similarities? When you look at it from a business perspective, there's a lot of similarities, and not being afraid to ask a lot of what I called maybe crazy questions, right? So asking for guidance along the way and not being afraid to admit that I don't know something about a new industry. Really, really important, because if you learn the business first, you gain a lot of credibility. If you ask a lot of great questions, you gain a lot of credibility. And people are then they're more willing to work with you because they see that you're curious. They see that you're open and you want to help them solve what's most important to them. The pace of change in any business today is very, very fast. And so I think from an HR perspective, it's important that not only myself, but my team, that we're enabled with the skills that are going to help us operate in that type of environment. So what does that mean? That means we have to be adaptable. I always say that, we may set out a plan for the next, 3, 4, 6, 10 months, and it's going to change, right? So we have to be flexible, and we have to recognize that we're moving with the business. As the business moves, we need to move. And so we look at things in a more macro level to say, where is the business going, and how are we going to align the people strategy to enable the business to succeed? I work with a lot of very smart people, and I think that it is important to continue to learn all the time, that you have to keep looking at those skills that are going to be necessary to take the organization forward, whether that is through going back and getting additional education, whether it's through other certifications, staying on top of the pace of change through learning and development is absolutely critical. But we gain a lot of our learning and development on the job too, right? And I guess it's important to really stress that it's not about just another degree or another certification. It's also about learning from people around you. And if you identify that maybe finance isn't your skill set, how can you get a mentor that's going to help you to round out your people skill set with those business skills that are going to be critical to move an organization forward? So I think we'd all love to think that there's no such thing as corporate politics. And HR is always looking to have the quote unquote seat at the table. I think to artfully navigate any politics or gaining that seat at the table, it's really critical to step back and say, what am I trying to solve for? How am I going to really bring value to the organization? And people will notice that. So what does that look like? It starts with understanding what the business needs are. What are we trying to solve for? How are we trying to grow? What problems are we trying to solve? And the reality is in business today, people are the competitive advantage. That is what's going to make an organization successful, regardless if you're manufacturing, if you sell a product or service, if you're in, healthcare, people are what make the difference. So if the organization is trying to solve for something, it's like stepping back and identifying what are the things we need people to do that are going to enable that to happen for an organization. By doing that, the success is going to come naturally. Getting people rowing in the same direction for a common cause through people is a huge opportunity in organizations today. And I would say that spend your time and energy there so that you can ride the success with an organization and be part of moving it forward. Learning and development is a critical part of any organization today, not only from the technical competence and that people have the right skills and they're being reskilled to do new jobs as jobs change. And I would also say that what I refer to as power skills, or the formerly known as soft skills, right, are more critical than ever. We're seeing in healthcare that a good nurse tends to be very task-oriented and is very, very good clinically and can come into a room of a patient and follow a process very, very good and technically do the job very well. But if the patient experience and that connection with a patient is missing, the whole thing kind of falls apart. The family and the patients don't really understand what's going on with their care. And even though that nurse could be very strong, that power skill, the ability to communicate and connect is absolutely paramount. So we're focusing on both, and we're focusing on the integration where we can teach people and educate to a day in the life. Like, how do you integrate the computer skills, the technical skills, the soft skills or the power skills, and the technical skills that are needed for that particular role. So learning and development is going to continue to be, I think, more and more powerful as organizations move forward based on all the change that's happening. I would also say that an investment in leadership development is critical. Great leaders help build great teams, and it starts there with organizational strategy, identifying what great leaders need to be able to do to move the organization forward, and aligning them to that mission. I'm really excited about the future from a career perspective because being in healthcare, I think there's so much incredible opportunity that lies ahead, albeit there's a lot of change, but we're going to make a difference and we're going to make it better. And I think being the head of human resources in a healthcare organization, we're going to be able to have such an impact on patient care and on how healthcare delivery happens in the United States. That's a change that has to happen, and it's something to be part of is really, really exciting. So I'm a big fan of John Maxwell, who writes a lot of books on leadership. Some of my favorites are the 360-degree leader, the 5 levels of leadership, and there's many, many more. What I love about John Maxwell is I think he puts into perspective that you can lead from anywhere. And what are those skills that you need to be able to develop that are going to help you to lead from anywhere? And how to lead up, down, and across the organization is critical. And I find that that's something that I use all the time in the work that I do. To be a good leader, you have to be able to engage people at every level and listen to them and be able to learn from them. It doesn't mean that you have all the answers just because you're the person with the top job, so to speak. I'm a big fan of investing in that leadership muscle. I think it's relatively easy to build the technical skill set. I think the more that we can build the muscle around leadership and around emotional intelligence and how to really engage others to solve problems and to take an organization to the next level is absolutely paramount. So making the time to get out of my own world and network is definitely a challenge, yet it's something that's vital. When I get out of my box, I learn so much more when I network at events or I am engaging in different forums with other professionals from other organizations. Those conversations and the learning that can take place about successes and things that are working in other organizations that I could really leverage has been proven to be successful over and over and over again. So I look at that as it's also an opportunity for a platform for new roles in other organizations. Again, knowing people and being able to connect the dots, I think, outside of your own space is important, not only for learning, but for looking for those future career opportunities. I think the elements that have helped with my success is recognizing first and foremost the importance of building strong, trusting relationships in every organization that I've had the pleasure of being part of. When you begin with those trusting relationships and really getting to know people, they'll help you learn, they'll help you grow, they'll be more inclined to work with you and collaborate with you. And I think it's a really critical part and one that's often forgotten, how important relationships and trust are. Right management's been a partner throughout my career in many different organizations and has been a great value in terms of certainly with the career transition process. I think that that's something that right management does extraordinarily well, and it gives me peace of mind knowing that when our organization needs to make those kind of changes, that our people are going to be very well taken care of. I'm always a big fan of making sure people leave feeling the very best that they can about their time that's spent at the organization. But it's more than that. It's more about talent development. It's more about executive coaching and preparing leaders for the future. And I've had the pleasure of partnering with Right Management over my career on various initiatives around assessment, around development, and certainly around executive coaching, and would find great value in the resources and the outcomes that we've seen as a result of our partnership. HR, had this reputation many, many years ago for just being an administrative function and how important human resources, the role that it plays in the organization today at the strategic level, and then also from a more tactical, get stuff done kind of a thing. People are an organization's competitive advantage. So being able to think strategically and being able to drive things through to execution aligned with the business, critical skill. I think it's really important for folks in HR, whether they're in compensation and benefits or they're in training and development or recruiter, whatever it may be, to look beyond your current role. Try to figure out how can you broaden the perspective of what else is in HR and what else is HR doing, but also what's the organization doing? How do I learn some of those skills that would help me understand the business that I'm actually in and how I can contribute in a greater way to that organization?